Imagine a quiet countryside in 19th century France, where gentle hills roll beneath a wide sky, and small towns doze under the weight of tradition and routine. Here, in this provincial world, a young woman named Emma Bovary enters into a life that promises safety and comfort, yet fails to ignite the passion she has long nurtured in secret. Gustave Flaubert's Madame Bovary takes us on a journey through Emma's dreams, disappointments, and the dangerous allure of forbidden desires. It is a story that begins with ordinary hopes and ends in tragedy, a tale of how illusions can slowly erode the soul when reality stands firm and unyielding. Our story opens with a glimpse into the early life of Charles Bovary, Emma's future husband, though at this point we know nothing of Emma. We first meet Charles as a young boy, introduced in a classroom scene that already suggests something unremarkable about his personality. He is timid, clumsy, and eager to please, a boy who grows into a man possessing the same mild and unassuming traits. Charles becomes a country doctor, not a brilliant physician, but a gentle, somewhat bumbling practitioner, loved more for his kindness than for any particular talent. After losing his first wife, an older widow whose property influenced his mother's choice more than love ever did, Charles encounters Emma, the daughter of a patient. She is living with her widower father, Monsieur Rouault, on a modest farm known as Les Bertaux. Charles visits to set the father's broken leg, and in that farmhouse kitchen, beneath the simple beams and the scent of straw, Charles first lays eyes on Emma. Emma Rouault is a striking young woman with dark hair and expressive eyes, educated in a convent and filled with romantic notions fed by countless novels of chivalry and passion. She dreams of elegant gowns, moonlit balls, noble sacrifices, and eternal love. She craves an escape from the dull rhythms of rural life and yearns for the kind of grand romance she has read about but never seen. When Charles, a kind and gentle doctor, begins to call more frequently under the guise of checking her father's leg, Emma senses a change in her destiny. Charles is smitten. To him, Emma is exquisite, delicate, and refined. He believes he has found his soulmate, though he barely understands her inner world. After a suitable period, Charles asks for Emma's hand in marriage. Eager for a new life, Emma accepts. She sees marriage not simply as a bond between two people, but as a promise of something greater, a window into a world of splendor and emotion. Their wedding day is a bucolic celebration, with tables set out on the farmyard grass, neighbors gathered beneath garlands, and the scent of fresh bread and wine in the air. Emma, dressed beautifully, hopes that this day will open the door to a new chapter of excitement and happiness. Charles is radiant, if a bit awkward, overjoyed to have won Emma's heart. But as the music fades and the guests depart, the bride's heart feels a slight disappointment. The wedding, though pleasant, lacked the grandeur she imagined, the flourish of trumpets and aristocratic guests. The first seed of disillusionment is planted quietly in her soul. Charles decides to move to a different town, Unfulfilled, believing a new environment will suit his wife and his practice better. Yonville is a sleepy place, a cluster of houses by a river, with fields stretching into the horizon. Life is slow here, the inn and pharmacy serving as social hubs. Emma sees the small houses with their modest gardens, and her heart sinks. This is not the glittering life she pictured. She settles into a routine with Charles, who adores her without condition, but his love is too simple, too ordinary. He believes that by providing comfort and stability, he will make Emma happy. But Emma thirsts for intensity, the fever of ardent love affairs, and the sophistication of high society gatherings. In Yonville, Emma meets a cast of characters who will shape her destiny. Among them is Monsieur Hummes, the town pharmacist, a self-important man who loves to pontificate on medicine and progress, always eager to criticize or advise. There is also Lyon Dupuis, a young law clerk who shares many of Emma's romantic sensibilities. Early in their acquaintance, Emma and Lyon discover a mutual love for music, art, and literature. Their conversations crackle with unspoken longing, each glance charged with possibilities. Lyon is shy and respectful, and though neither confesses love, they sense a kinship that could easily blossom if circumstances allowed. Yet Emma remains Charles's wife. She fights an internal battle. Is it not sinful and wrong to desire more than what she has? The tension between her yearnings and her duty to the good-hearted Charles gnaws at her spirit. Emma's discontent grows. She tries to be the perfect wife, keeps the house in order, and even becomes pregnant. But pregnancy does not bring her joy. Instead, she feels trapped, and when her daughter Baird is born, Emma does not find maternal bliss, only another reminder that her life is ordinary and far from her dreams. The child is cared for by a wet nurse, and Emma remains distant, her emotional reserves dried by disappointment. Meanwhile, Lyon, sensing that the closeness he desires is unattainable, decides to leave Yonville for Paris, hoping to study law. His departure wounds Emma more than she cares to admit. It's as if a small door to romance and understanding is closed. Just as Emma sinks deeper into melancholy, a new figure arrives in her life. Rodolphe Boulanger, a wealthy landowner, confident, worldly, and a bit cynical. Unlike Charles, who is all earnestness, Rodolphe approaches Emma with the calculating ease of a practiced seducer. At an agricultural fair, amidst the braying of livestock and the chatter of country folk, Rodolphe flirts with Emma, weaving words of admiration and subtle promises. The scene is brilliantly ironic. While local dignitaries extol the virtues of hard work and loyalty, Rodolphe murmurs to Emma about love's sweetness and the dullness of provincial existence. Emma, starved for passion, is enchanted. She soon falls into a secret affair with him, believing at last she has found the grand romance she deserves. In Rodolphe's presence, Emma feels alive. She dresses more elegantly, invests in expensive home decorations, and even becomes cruelly impatient with Charles, whose plain devotion now seems insufferable. She writes passionate letters to Rodolphe, dreams of running away with him, and imagines a new life of endless romance. But Rodolphe grows bored. He never intended a grand love story, only a dalliance to amuse himself. When Emma presses him to elope and start anew elsewhere, Rodolphe panics. He writes her a farewell letter, hiding his cowardice and false concern. The shock of this abandonment shatters Emma's illusions. One night, confronted by his sudden departure, she stands at her window, eyes filled with tears, and loses all hope. In despair, Emma attempts suicide by swallowing a handful of a home remedy, but it fails. She falls seriously ill, hovering between life and death for weeks, and Charles, terrified, nurses her back to health with tireless devotion. In this convalescence, Emma seems to rediscover a kind of peace, a religious fervor even, trying to repent her sins and accept her ordinary lot. Time passes, and Emma's resolve to be virtuous and content wanes. Soon after she recovers, Lyon returns to Yonville, more self-assured and mature after his time in the city. Their connection rekindles, but now Emma is less innocent, more calculated. She and Lyon share secret meetings. Emma travels to Rouen for music lessons, but in reality spends afternoons in a discreet hotel room with Lyon. This second affair is different. Lyon is not as worldly or cynical as Rodolphe, but he is also not the chivalrous knight Emma once imagined. Though he tries to satisfy her craving for romance, the truth is that their love is uneven, strained by Emma's insatiable demands and Lyon's growing anxiety about the risks they are taking. While Emma juggles her secret passions, she spirals into financial trouble. All along, she has been buying luxuries on credit from Leroux, a local merchant and moneylender. He tempts her with fine silks, elegant gowns, and stylish furniture. Emma, chasing the image of a refined life, cannot resist. Bills pile up. She signs promissory notes without understanding their gravity. Leroux, who has the air of a polite businessman, is actually setting a trap, planning to seize the Bovary's property once the debts become unmanageable. Emma's spending reflects her attempt to turn fantasy into reality, to transform her dusty existence into a sparkling romance. But no gown or piece of jewelry can fill the void in her soul. As her debts mount and the deadlines loom, Emma grows desperate. Her romance with Lyon loses its initial glow. He becomes irritated by her emotional dramas and the constant pleas for him to act more boldly, more gallantly. The flame that once felt so warm begins to flicker, revealing not the grand passion Emma imagined, but a tepid liaison that cannot sustain her dreams. The intensity of their encounters fades, replaced by strained conversations and awkward silences. Emma's disillusionment is complete. Neither Rodolphe nor Lyon has delivered the ecstasy she craves. Charles's unwavering kindness now appears as a dull background hum in her frantic life. Even religion, which she once clung to momentarily, does not soothe her restless heart. With the creditors closing in, Emma's panic is palpable. Sheriff's officers threaten to repossess the household goods. Charles is oblivious, trusting Emma completely, assuming everything is under control. Emma tries to raise money by pleading with Rodolphe, who greets her kindly but firmly refuses. His cool rejection stings her anew. She begs Lyon to help, but he too finds excuses. Emma is left alone, cornered, with no one to save her from the financial catastrophe she created. The lovely facade she tried to maintain is crumbling. In a final, desperate act, Emma turns to the village pharmacist Homaise's assistant for arsenic. She claims it's needed for a household task, and, given the lax controls of the time, she obtains it with ease. Back at home, with a trembling hand, Emma swallows the poison. The description of her slow, painful death is harrowing. She writhes in agony, and Charles, horrified, summons doctors who can do nothing. Emma's last hours stretch with excruciating detail, filled with moans, regrets, and half-formed apologies. The poison ravages her body, and the once beautiful, once passionate Emma Bovary dies in a state of wretched suffering. Her death is not the romantic exit she might have once fantasized about. It is grim and painful, a bitter end to her illusions. Charles is devastated. He loved Emma with all his heart and never understood her dissatisfaction. After her death, as he sorts through her belongings, Charles discovers letters revealing her affairs. At first, the shock is unimaginable. Emma's betrayals crush him. Yet over time, the initial anger fades into a sorrowful acceptance. He cannot hate Emma. He can only mourn the woman he thought he knew. Charles's own health declines as he sinks into depression and financial ruin. Eventually, he dies as well, leaving their daughter Baird an orphan. Baird, the innocent child caught in this tragic web, ends up living with distant relatives and forced into humble labor at a cotton mill, symbolizing the utter collapse of the family's dreams. The novel ends not with triumph or redemption, but with a quiet understanding that life has continued without them, that the grand gestures Emma yearned for never materialized. Instead, the world goes on, indifferent and unchanged by their suffering. Madame Bovary's tragedy lies in the contradiction between Emma's romantic yearnings and the indifferent reality around her. She lived in a time and place where a woman with her aspirations found no outlet. The society Flaubert depicts is stiflingly narrow, filled with gossiping neighbors and conventional morality. Emma tries to transcend her circumstances through love affairs and material luxuries, but her attempts only dig her deeper into despair. In searching for meaning and excitement, she finds only false promises and exploitation. Emma Bovary's story is also Charles's story, Rodolphe's story, Lyon's story, and even Homaise's story. Each character embodies a different facet of provincial life. Charles's kindness mixed with naivety, Rodolphe's predatory charm and boredom, Lyon's weak-willed romanticism, and Homaise's bourgeois pomposity. Beneath the personal drama, there is a broader commentary on how people chase illusions and ignore the beauty or dignity that might be found in the simple, ordinary joys of life. The novel questions whether romantic ideals, inherited from literature and daydreams, can ever survive the dull grind of day-to-day living. Flaubert's style, though not directly visible in a summary, is famously precise and objective. He does not moralize openly. He presents Emma's despair without offering simple solutions. Instead, he gives us a richly detailed world, from the provincial market stalls to the stifling drawing rooms, to let us feel the weight of constraints that shape his characters' fates. The pacing of the novel, the attention to every nuance of expression and gesture, reinforces the themes of longing, disillusionment, and the search for meaning. By the end of Emma's journey, we see that every outward display of splendor she coveted was hollow inside, every love affair more fragile than she imagined, and every escape route blocked by the realities of class, money, and gender roles. The themes of Madame Bovary resonate beyond its 19th century setting. The tension between fantasy and reality, the longing for a more passionate existence, and the relentless dissatisfaction that comes from chasing impossible ideals are universal struggles. Emma Bovary's tragedy is not just that she was a dreamer in a provincial town. It is that she never learned to find grace or happiness in what was real and attainable. She let illusions guide her, allowing them to become a prison instead of a source of hope. For a modern reader or viewer, Emma's plight can evoke both sympathy and frustration. On one hand, we understand her disappointment. Life in a small town, married to a dull doctor, and surrounded by gossipy neighbors might suffocate anyone's spirit. On the other hand, Emma's own choices, her reckless spending, her coldness toward her husband and child, her relentless pursuit of selfish pleasure, contribute to her downfall. She bears responsibility for her fate just as much as society restricts her. In Charles's case, his utter blindness and passivity make him a tragic figure too. He never understood Emma's dreams, never asked himself if her discontent might be relieved by more than a kind word or a new dress. He believed love alone would suffice, and he never developed the insight to see that Emma's needs were different. His heartbreak at the end, discovering her affairs and the extent of her despair, is crushing. One can't help but pity him as he shuffles aimlessly after her death, a broken man left with only memories and regrets. Rodolphe and Lyon are also part of the commentary. Rodolphe, with his manipulative charm, shows how easily Emma's romantic ideals can be exploited. Lyon, though gentler, is ultimately weak and unable to meet Emma on the grand stage of eternal love. Both affairs, which she saw as escapes, crumble under the pressure of the real world, proving that the fantasy of perfect passion she yearned for was unsustainable. In the end, Madame Bovary is about the dangers of conflating life with artful illusions, of expecting reality to match the intensity of dreams spun from romantic novels and glamorous fantasies. The story repeatedly contrasts Emma's romantic literature-fueled expectations with the banality of rural French life. Through her downfall, Flaubert warns that to live entirely for idealized pleasures, be they love, wealth, or social prestige, is to court disaster. As we close this chapter on Emma Bovary and her world, we are left reflecting on our own lives. Are we, too, tempted by illusions that cannot survive the test of reality? Do we chase ideals that, once attained, reveal their emptiness? Or can we find beauty, dignity, and meaning in the imperfect realities we inhabit? The novel suggests that the answers are not simple. We must look honestly at ourselves and our surroundings, recognize that life will rarely conform to our most extravagant hopes, and learn to appreciate what is genuine, even if it lacks the grandeur we once imagined. In this way, Madame Bovary endures as a timeless exploration of human nature, a mirror held up to our own yearnings and discontents. Emma's tragic story invites us to question the sources of our happiness and the costs of our desires. It remains a powerful reminder that the line between hope and despair is thin, and that the pursuit of unrealistic ideals can exact a terrible price. By the final page, we are left with a lingering sense of melancholy and a renewed awareness of how delicate the balance is between what we dream and what the world is willing to provide.